Okay, thank you. I've got a few announcements to make. Could I welcome Scott Haldane? He's the NHS non-executive board member, and Ione McRae, who's the newly appointed Chief Social Work Officer. So welcome. Hope you enjoy the meeting. And to Fiona McEwen, who's the newly appointed NHS Director of Finance. We also have some guest speakers this morning. Item 11. Will be Lynn Huckerby, NHS Deputy Director of Acute Services, Change and Transformation. Welcome. Item 14, Anne Broderick, Fieldwork Manager, Adult and Older People, Social Work Resources. Welcome. Item 15 is Jackie Fernie, Homelessness and Housing Support Manager, Housing and Technical Resources. Welcome to you. And item 16 is Jen Kerr, the Community Engagement Manager for South Lanarkshire Council. So I'd just like to welcome you all to the meeting. I hope you find it productive and informative. So moving on, I'll go on to item 1. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting, and that's pages 5 to 14. Can these be approved as a correct record? Okay, I'll take that as being agreed. Item 3 are the minutes of the South Lanarkshire IGB Performance and Audit Subcommittee, pages 15 to 22. Could these be confirmed as a correct record? Agreed. Okay, moving on. Item 4, minutes of the special meeting, South Lanarkshire IGB Performance and Audit Subcommittee, and that's pages 23 to 26. Can these be approved as a correct record? Agreed. Okay, I'm just assuming if nobody says anything, so if anybody comes back later, I take no responsibility. Moving on, items for decision and discussion. Item 5 is the Integrated Joint Board Membership Update, and it's pages 27 to 32. And could I ask Subin to speak to this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The Chair's already welcomed the new members to the board, so this paper formalises that. So, as set out within the background, section 3, the responsibilities of the IGB under statute and the nature of the membership between not just the Health Board and the Council, but other stakeholders. Section 4 then highlights the changes to the membership in respect of Scott Haldane joining from NHS Lanarkshire, Anya McRae joining as Chief Social Work Officer, and also noting Fiona McEwen taking up post the Director of Finance from NHS Lanarkshire as well. So having set all that out and noting that the Chair's already welcomed the new members, I would take you back to the recommendations on section 2 and happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Do we agree to note the report? Agreed. Don't see any comments. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, it's the risk management update, and that's pages 33 to 50. And could I ask Marie to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to previous reports, the report provides an update on the IGB's risk register and the associated partners' risks. There are 6 IGB risks. 4 are currently assessed as very high and 2 are high. These are highlighted at paragraph 4.2 and further explained at appendices 1 and 2. The market and provider capacity risk has moved from a medium risk to a very high risk to reflect an increased fragility in the market, mainly as a result of a combination of circumstances which are highlighted at paragraph 4.3. The winter demand pressures risk has also been added to the risk register, again to reflect what is known from previous years in that winter brings a number of challenges, also highlighted at paragraph 4.3. The partner risks for NHSL and SLC for the very high and high risks which directly impact on the business of the IGB are highlighted at Appendix 3. I should like to refer to section 2 on page 33 and ask the IGB to approve the 2 recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Marie. Don't see any questions, comments. Do we agree to note recommendation 1 and approve recommendation? Sorry, Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Just a query in relation to the risk 6, the market and provider capacity. I appreciate there's significant turmoil in the market at the moment. is just looking at the winter preparedness. I think we've got more capacity in the system in terms of, you know, care packages available than we've ever had before, and they've increased. It just seems contrary to the fact there's a shortage there. I was just wondering what the percentage is and between sort of the outsourced, the third sector and private sector versus sort of the Lanarkshire provision.
Okay. Do you want to take that, Suman?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Good morning, Donald. Thank you for the question. So, broadly speaking, the ratio is 60 to 66% for in-house and a small proportion externally. As you've highlighted, because of the nature of winter pressures, that will have probably adjusted somewhat. What I would highlight is that, one, we've got very good levels of recruitment within the in-house service. At the moment, we've just completed another recruitment round, and we've got another one planned for January. So we're absolutely looking to maximise our in-house capacity as far as possible, because going back to previous decisions made by the board, that's been the board's preference, that we absolutely make sure that our first port of call for investment is staff directly employed within the in-house services managed by the HSCP. Alongside, though, you're absolutely right, again, given winter pressures and demands and the opportunities to do so, we've also been looking to maximise our work with our independent sector providers in relation to that. And again, that's been, we've prudently managed the budget to ensure that we had additional resource available for this time of the year, and we've benefited from additional resources being provided through the NHS Winter Planning Programme, as members will recall from other forums, and indeed will be discussed later when Paul prepares that report. So I would anticipate the ratio is probably around 55 in-house, 45 external at the moment, but I can come back to you with more precise figures. That's going to be in flux over the course of the period, and it does very much depend on availability. I would highlight, though, and it goes back to this risk, that this isn't just about the care at home service. This is also about nursing care homes, providers of complex care for adults with learning disabilities. So it goes much wider than the care at home set of arrangements we've got in place. So and obviously, depending on the particular service users we're providing support to and the degree of specificity of the provision that's provided within the market, that brings a different level of risk. I hope that's helpful, and again, happy to come back to you separately with specific information. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's extremely helpful. So when I say it's an additional mitigation measures in place, then looking at bringing the internal resources, just it doesn't mention those as mitigation within sort of the risk and focus, and it might be helpful just to add that we are doing that to try and mitigate that risk as well by these measures. Thanks.
I'm happy to do that way, Donald, and add that in.
Okay, thanks, Suman. There's also the paper coming up later on, winter preparedness, outlines a lot of these measures as well that have been implemented. I don't see any other questions. Do we agree to note recommendation 1 and approve recommendation 2?
Chair, there's another hand up.
So it's not coming up.
It's Eileen, Margaret.
Hi, Eileen. I can't
Sorry,
see your
it was
hand.
me.
Just
This
come
is
in,
just
yeah.
really, it's a sort of generic question, and I ask it at most of the committees that I'm on. But the very nature of what we do in an industry, I think emergencies can arise very quickly. And Suman touched on 2 or 3 of the things. It's not just one part. It can be services being withdrawn quickly, etc., from areas especially where I live, the Clydesdale area, and then we have to sort of find a sort of stopgap to try and shore it up till we can really look at it. So I've always meant to ask this: if, say, an emergency absolutely arises, and what then, and we go from sort of green or whatever up to, red emergency, is the sort of timeline for dealing with that? Is that like at Suman level, down to you, down to where, to escalate it up to make things happen, or does it just all happen and then, Suman then has to report back? I understand, like it can happen very quickly and people have to step in, but I'm assuming there'll be a chain of command as well where yourself and maybe your deputy would know, and then, the rest would follow on. Just wondered about that first. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Suman?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Eileen, for the question. It will surprise nobody who's worked with me for a period of time to know that absolutely there will be a chain of command in respect of issues having to get escalated in relation to that. That being said, there is an expectation, certainly in terms of our lead professionals from whatever stripe, and indeed our managers at appropriate levels, that they will take action as and when issues start to deteriorate or issues start to become a concern. So we're expecting our managers and staff are empowered to take action at the earliest possible point to avoid situations getting to a point where they've kind of escalated in the manner you've highlighted. But certainly as risks arise in those regards, that absolutely that's then highlighted to myself and the senior management team, and then we take appropriate action. And indeed, as some of you will recall from the past, depending on the nature of the issue, and it does depend on the nature of the issue, that would also be brought to the attention of the chair, the vice chair, and indeed on occasion all of the integration joint board members as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Don't see any other hands. Do we agree then to note recommendation 1 and approve recommendation 2 of the report? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, financial monitoring 2025 to 26, and that's pages 51 to 66. And could I ask Marie to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out the projected position of break-even at the 31st of March 2026 for the delegated social care and housing services side of the business. This is based on period 6 information at the 5th of September 2025. So at this stage, a projected year-end variance is not currently being reported by the SLC partner, and a break-even position is being reported pending the outcome of the probable outturn exercise. In respect of the delegated healthcare services, an underspend of 362,000 is reported at the 30th of September 2025, and a break-even position is also reported at the 31st of March 2026. The report provides the detail of the variances and also highlights the progress being made this year in respect of the savings targets. At paragraph 5.7 on page 54, we highlight that notwithstanding ongoing recruitment activity by the SLC partner, it is recognised that a potential non-recurring underspend will occur within employee costs due to vacancies over the remainder of the financial year. So subject to the outcome of the probable outturn exercise that is currently being undertaken, a transfer to an SLC reserve of up to £500,000 is being considered by the South Lanarkshire Council Executive Committee on the 4th of February 2026, and the IJB has been asked to endorse this consideration. This potential transfer would support the transformational improvement opportunity across residential care services, the scope in respect of which is currently being developed, as highlighted at paragraph 9.3 of the report. An update on the probable outturn exercise will be provided to the next meeting of the Performance and Audit Subcommittee on the 24th of February and also to the IJB on the 31st of March 2026. Subject to SLC agreement, any further opportunistic underspends that may occur between now and the end of the year could be transferred to an IJB reserve, and if this did happen, it would be available as bridging funding for future financial plans as we go forward. The position in respect of the 25-26 savings target of 17.657 million is highlighted at section 6. The healthcare services saving of 4.7 million has been achieved, which is 48% of the target of 9.6 million. And in terms of social care and housing, the projected target saving of just under £8 million is on course to be achieved in full. I've highlighted the position in respect of reserves at section 7. There's been a drawdown of £798,000 on the delegated healthcare side, and I've updated the budget at section 8 and included the details of the additional winter planning funding, which is being made available by NHS, which Suman referred to previously. And a further update on the transformational improvement opportunities at section 9 is summarised. So I should like to take you back to section 2 on page 51 and ask the IJB to approve the 4 recommendations, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Marie. Any questions, comments for Marie? Oh, do we agree to note the recommendations in 1, 2 and 4 and endorse recommendation 3 for the report?
Right. Chair, I think Leslie Ann McDonald, Leslie maybe
Sorry,
has a question.
Obviously, something's not coming up on my screen. Hang on.
I think, Chair, that was my fault. I put my hand
Right.
up, and then as you were summing up, I thought I could put it down. It was as much a comment as a question, and just to say, not jumping on to the next item, but we have very sound financial management, but at the moment we appear to be relying quite heavily on reserves, and just to commend the approach of using funding to support transformational change, because I think it's quite clear that our future is going to be in doing things differently and effectively, rather than continuing to try to do the same thing with dwindling resources. So it was really as much a comment as that. If there were any question, it was whether Marie had anything more to say about the transformational opportunity at 572, but I think it may be being developed from what the report's saying.
Yep. Thank you, Leslie. The work is ongoing and the areas are being scoped just now, so we will be bringing back further information to future meetings, but it is at an early stage, and the aim is to look for better outcomes for individuals, which hopefully to the side will also deliver savings, but the focus is on improving outcomes for individuals. Thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Marie. I don't see any other comments. Do we agree to note recommendations 1, 2 and 4 and endorse recommendation 3? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 8 is the Integration Joint Board Financial Plan 2020 26 to 27. That's pages 67 to 84. And could I ask Marie, that was not deliberate, honestly, to speak to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As we know, the IJB has a statutory responsibility to set a balanced budget. Based on the information that's available currently, this report sets out an indicative IJB financial plan for 26-27, which would allow us to deliver a balanced budget in order to meet that statutory responsibility. The indicative funding gap is projected to be 7 million for social care services and 11 million for healthcare services, so it totals 18 million across both partners. The proposed financial strategy to address the indicative funding gap is summarised at section 4 and is outlined at appendices 1 to 7 of the report. In respect of the NHSL partner, what I want to flag up is the plan reflects the savings which were previously approved by the Health Board on the 27th of March 2025. This was the second year of a 3-year plan presented at that time. So this will be reviewed when the budget settlement is known in January 2026, and I'll be coming back with an update once that's been confirmed. Further work on prescribing costs is proposed, building on the positive action that's been taken during 25-26, and again that will be refreshed when we get the budget settlement in January 26. In respect of the SLC partner, the indicative plan reflects management and operational actions that are already being progressed because it's best practice and it's helping to contribute towards the funding gap. You will see that both plans do rely on non-recurring funding options, the vacancy-related adjustments that we're relying on, and also the use of reserves. Taken together, though, and assuming no other significant changes between now and the end of the year, The overall plan would allow us to achieve financial balance in 26-27, but it is indicative and we are continuing to monitor it and will update it when the budget settlement is confirmed in January 26. You'll see at paragraph 463 on page 70 that I've highlighted the request for the IJB to endorse the Chief Officer convening a short life working group to co-produce options for allocating funding totalling £2 million over 3 years to tackle child poverty and strengthen early years family support effectively. I've also highlighted at paragraph 464 that once the budget settlement in January 26 is confirmed, we will consider the plan, how the plan could further contribute to the preventative agenda. So we'll actively monitoring that as we go forward. Included in the summary at paragraph 47 is a proposal to continue to adopt for 26-27 the current approach for the management of overspends and underspends across hosted services, and each year we ask annually for that approval to be provided by the IJB, and similarly the same request would be made to our North Lanarkshire IJB partners. Members will be aware of the pressures across public services nationally, and I've highlighted at paragraph 86 that following the budget settlement for 26-27, the financial forecasts for the medium term 27 to 2030 will be updated and brought back to you at a future meeting. And as highlighted at section 10, pending the final confirmation of the budget, there are no directions to be varied at this stage, based on the indicative plan. I should like to thank SLC and NHSL finance colleagues for their advice and support while preparing this indicative plan, and also for their ongoing commitment to the achievement of the integrated health and social care outcomes. And as we know, the delegated funds come from both partners, and both partners do face challenges balancing the non-delegated budgets that they're responsible for. So recurring financial and operational sustainability is our joint strategic aim, and we'll continue to work together to secure that going forward. But I would like to thank Jackie Taylor and Michael McCluskey, who was the Interim Director of Finance pending Fiona's joining us on the team. So I should like to return to the 9 recommendations which are detailed at section 2 on pages 67 and 68, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marie. Are there any questions? Leslie?
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, it's a comment and a question. I mean, given the current financial climate, I was really heartened to read today's agenda. At the last item, we were looking at improving outcomes for some of the most vulnerable in our communities. And at this item, we're looking at the marmot work and the focus on the prevention agenda, which isn't always easy to find the money for, as we know. My question, at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, is I don't know if Mark or Fiona would be able to comment on the reasonableness of the assumptions in relation to prescribing efficiencies given the costs involved there. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Leslie. Does anyone want to respond to that?
Chair, I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
I think Fiona's hand's up as well, Chair.
Nope. Chair,
There's something, I don't know what's happening, but hands don't seem to be coming up in my screen. I need to shout out, I think. Okay, it was Fiona first then, or?
I think she was. I'm happy to come in after Fiona, Chair.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to say the assumptions for the prescribing had been reviewed by the kind of Corporate Finance Network, which is the national network, and given us a guide. But I know further work has been done internally, and this is what Mark might pick up on as well, just to kind of review how that kind of feeds in with how the projections looking for Lanarkshire. So they have been reviewed in detail and have been kind of adjusted accordingly in line with what we predict is going to happen. So I think they are quite reasonable assumptions that have been used, but Mark can confirm. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Okay, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. There's obviously 2 halves to the projections here. The first is round about the future projections in terms of prescribing costs and so on. As Fiona said, there's, I think, reasonable certainty about that. I think that the projections for this year so far have turned out to be a little lower actually than we expected, which is obviously good news, and there's a hope that will continue in terms of a little bit of a fall off in the inflation rate essentially on prescribing costs. In the background, there's obviously substantial work going on this year. There has been over recent years in relation to prescribing savings. Much of that work is well embedded now in terms of polypharmacy work, in terms of the drugs of low therapeutic value, and that's work that we continue to work with our practices on and to embed. I would say within that the savings target, which has been set for next year, is a challenging target. And you wouldn't expect it to be anything other than a challenging target in the current financial climate. So that will require us to carry on working with our pharmacy teams and also with our GP practices to ensure that we are extracting all efficiencies that we can. We are looking at a number of new approaches and assessing the potential for them to add value to our current approaches. So I wouldn't want the IJB to think that we're resting on our laurels with the approaches that have seen a fair amount of fruit over the last few years. And we will be continuing to work on that. And I would expect to work with Marie over the next few months and bring a further update to the next IJB meeting through her report.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay. I know from the report in terms of the Marmot work, and we've also got the community plan on later on in the agenda, an update in relation to the range of outcomes that stretch across, all or most of the services. And I was just wondering, assuming in terms of the Marmot information, is that going to be useful in terms of being able to identify where there are resources that could perhaps be, targeted a more preventative approach in relation to child poverty, and is it a bit about looking at it obviously in the round in terms of the totality of resources at the moment that you could argue all or a percentage of are going into relieving child poverty and improving outcomes? Is that something that the Marmot work is going to assist us to be able to do?
If I can come in, Chair, I'm conscious that Scott's waiting very patiently. So in respect to your question around the Marmot, I don't want to prejudge where we're going with that process. I suspect it will be a combination of both. There's a number of members who will appreciate there's been a huge amount of work being undertaken through the course of the Marmot programme over the course of the recent months, looking at data and particularly focusing on a more granular understanding of the picture within particular neighbourhoods. In relation to that, there's been a number, the reports highlight a number of publications that's come out through Public Health Scotland, which provide the headline set of data for both South Lanarkshire and indeed the other areas which are involved in this project. We have a Marmot leadership group later on, which is chaired by the Chief Executives, and without prejudging the timelines for this, I would anticipate bringing a more detailed report on Marmot to the next meeting in relation to where we've got to do with that work, and to start giving a greater indication of with the direction of travel, given what you've set out there, Chair. As I said, I suspect it's going to be a combination of both more targeted activity, because one of the things that Marmot does talk about is a principle of proportionate universalism, whereby you would prioritise more resources and activity to particular areas of special need, whilst also at the same time looking at how we can move all of our services in respect of some of the work we do with young children and early years in particular to a greater preventative footing. So it'll be a combination of both. In terms of the approach we've set it here, though, we will put together a specification for the work, and then that will be passed on to the Short Life Working Group to take forward. So again, it's not for me to prejudge the co-produced outcome of what that group would recommend in terms of the utilisation of that resource and how we would move forward with it. What we are proposing with the report, though, that this resource will be distributed and utilised through the third sector. So it'll be very much about community organisations taking the lead and taking that work forward within the framework of Marmot and our commitment to both improving early years and particularly targeting child poverty. But again, I'd be planning to and very happy to bring a full report on this to the next meeting.
Great, thanks,
Thank you.
Susan. Sorry, Scott.
Thanks, Chair. And if I could just say, first of all, thanks to Marie and Suman, who have very kindly spent some time with me over the course of the last week or so, just kind of bringing me up to date with what the IGB is all about, and the detail, in particular the financial plan. And that brings me to a point that both Leslie's made and you've also made, Chair. It's great to see that level of investment in the child poverty early years, of the 2 million over the three years. But I'm also thoughtful, and I would say this with my NHS Lanarkshire Population Health Committee Chair hat on, the sense of goodwill and ambition that we discussed when we were together up in Ravenscraig. I just wonder if without wishing to undermine the essence of the plan itself, whether we're going far enough in terms of the population health agenda in the work plan. We've talked about closing the gap with the efficiencies. Can we look at greater efficiencies to try and create more capacity? Throughout the course of the year, is this something we're putting a marker down to have an even greater level of investment in the population health framework ambitions in 27-28? But as I say, it's just more to kind of reinforce that message, if I may, because I came away from Ravenscraig thinking, yep, we're all in, and we need to find the money to do this. And whilst we've recognised some investment, particularly aligned to Ches and Marmot, I just wonder if we're going far enough.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Suman, do you want to come in on that?
Thank you. And again, I relish the challenge because it's very refreshing for us to all be in a position where we are deeply committed to doing more in terms of prevention and particularly addressing health inequalities. I'll say this so that because otherwise Marie will have to say, obviously we have a statutory responsibility to set a balanced budget at the beginning of the year, and we also work very hard to ensure that we finish the year within budget, not least because if we have any overspends, and that's a requirement for that, well, they're not requirements, it's a request that has to go back to the Health Board and to the Council to address in the context of both those organisations having significant financial challenges themselves and having difficult decisions to have to navigate. As this paper and the previous paper also highlighted, and as I know you're all aware on, the position around IGB finances across Scotland is precarious, to say the least. So we are in this position because of decisions that this board has made over previous budget cycles, and from my perspective, the work that my leadership team, Marie and others, have undertaken, so that we've got as much stability in terms of our service provision, that we have provided space to do transformation at different paces that we've reported on already at previous meetings, and indeed, as Marie have indicated, we're going forward, and also then to provide some headspace in the manner that Scott set out there to allow us to invest in a meaningful fashion in prevention. Board members will have understood my enthusiasm for the population health framework, but also the degree of frustration I have around the fact that that wasn't accompanied by any new monies. We are in a fortunate position, I would say, that we've been able to put forward to you a financial plan that does allow a material investment in prevention at a time when I suspect many of your counterparts across Scotland are going to be struggling to even finish the year in budget, and I've absolutely wished them well in those endeavours. So I think we just have to be really realistic here. Something that's important to me is that we don't make promises that we can't keep. So if we're going to say we're going to invest in prevention from an office perspective, we will absolutely go away to identify opportunities to do that. And as part of budget setting processes going forward, we will also be upfront around the choices that might have to be made in order to enable to do more of that. At the same time, though, we're not going to make propositions that we can't fund, and we certainly won't be doing that in a way that destabilises services that are already under considerable pressure. And again, we will have later reports on both winter preparedness and on scheduled care, which will underline the very significant pressures we continue to be on in terms of delivering day-to-day services for many people that most need. I'm absolutely, as I said, up for the challenge, and I know the team are, and this is something that we will continue to work on. And as indeed Marie's papers highlighted, we will continue to do this as part of the final budget process for the next IGB. So if there is further opportunities for us to amplify other opportunities for prevention, particularly within in-house services alongside this commitment, we will absolutely bring that to your attention, because again, we are quite clear that in addition to doing the day-to-day, we have a commitment to improving population health over the medium to long term, and as from an office perspective, we'll do everything we can to provide you with those choices. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that response, Suman. I've got Jimmy Wilson.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to add to what Suman had said and Scott had asked about, the third sector welcome the potential investment into prevention, And just to add that it's the third sector's role now over the coming months and years to try and leverage additional resource into South Lanarkshire to ensure that we continue that prevention work. And that work's already started with trusts and foundations and high net worth individuals. And as and when anything comes online and we get additional funding, then I'll maybe come back to the IGB to give you a detailed report on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jimmy. That'd be really useful. I've got Paul Manning.
Well, listen, thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. And hopefully I'm maybe going to try and give Scott just a wee bit of comfort. I think we're all absolutely on the same page in this, right? And without going back over what Suman said a couple of seconds ago, in terms of the marmot work that's been done already, right? Essentially, it's a big data analysis exercise which looks at the outcomes in terms of health, right? And it looks as well at what, you know, how those sit in areas that suffer deprivation. And you know, you've heard me say this before, and I think I said this when we were at the event in Ravenscraig. It's not surprising that the people who live in the most deprived communities have got the worst health outcomes, right? And where that, you know, there'll be aspects of nuance about that, and there is interesting information, but it takes you back to that question: what is it you're going to do about it, right? And that for me is the, you know, is what Suman is starting to outline here, and that's the really exciting, important part of work, and I think we're all in agreement in that. Seeing taking money and identifying it towards preventative spend, and I get the limitations of that in the context of the wider budget. That's a massively important, it's a hugely progressive step that's been taken in doing this. And Suman's right, and Jimmy's absolutely right as well. I think, yeah, every opportunity that we can get to build in that, we should. So Suman and Marie have pulled off a trick here in keeping the IGB on a good financial footing and finding that capability to move us in a preventative direction. And it's the most important step that we can possibly take at this point. The other thing that I would say is, and I think it's really, really important, yeah, ourselves as a council, NHS Lanarkshire, Jimmy, in terms of the third and voluntary sector, we are all absolutely pointed in the same direction on this, right? And this is a very exciting place to be, right, in doing this work. And I think we're getting a bit of recognition across Scotland for our position on that. So to come back to Suman's point, across the first quarter of next year, yeah, we need to start coming back to the IGB. I need to go to the council. I need to put Louise in a position with NHS Lanarkshire where we're able to go back and say, look, here are concrete things that we can start to do. Here's a plan, right, that we can take to use this money and get every pound worth of value that we can out of it, Scott. So, yeah, like yourself, really invigorated coming off the back of the Ravenscraig exercise, and what Suman's managed to factor in here is really genuinely very exciting. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, and I think it is, you see, Paul, it'd be really interesting to get the report and look at it in more detail in terms of how it's going to, you know, impact and how we, you know, use the resources and how we impact on the equalities within our, you know, areas that have been falling behind. And I would also endorse the comments in terms of South Lanarkshire and the IGB position on this and some of the work that's already been done. Again, using children's services as an example in terms of the move towards much more community-based care, for example, at the family support hubs and the intensive family support that was done in partnership with the third sector and the voluntary sector. And as you say, that has actually you know, brought results in terms of our budget position being more positive than it is in many, many other areas within Glasgow. Sorry, across Scotland. So thank you for that. I don't see, there are no other comments. So just like to thank you again for that report, Marie. And do we agree to note the recommendations 1, 2, 7, 8 and 9 and to endorse recommendation 4, 5 and 6 and approve recommendation 3? Agreed. Thank you. Can we move on then to item 9? It's the performance monitoring report, and that's pages 85 to 102. And can I ask Marie again to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an update on the performance against the core suite of measures developed for the 5 strategic goals in the Strategic Commissioning Plan for 25 to 28, and these are appended to this report. At section 2 on page 92, you'll see that the second of the 2 access measures, which relates to the average call waiting times across Lanarkshire, is continuing to be actively developed. As highlighted at section 6 on page 100, Blantyre Life won the Integrated Care Award at the Scottish Health Awards, and David Walker Gardens Smart TV development was also a finalist in the Mental Health Award category. In line with the internal audit best practice recommendation that was made recently, a link between performance outcomes and strategic risks is included at section 7 on page 101. I should like to refer to section 2 on page 85 and ask the IGIB to approve the 1 recommendation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Marie. Are there any questions, comments for Marie? No, don't see any. Okay, do we have, sorry, Leslie.
Thanks, Chair. It's really just a comment. I think you and I both receive emails weekly from the CRAG about delayed discharge performance, and I'd like to thank Suman and all of the team, and also NHS Lanarkshire colleagues on the call for our continued sustained improvement in delayed discharges. We haven't gone for the big bang, we've gone for the sustained improvement, and I'm looking forward to hearing later on today about other things that can be done to improve flow through our acute hospitals. Thanks for the opportunity, Chair.
Thanks for that, Leslie. Don't see any other comments. Do we agree then to approve the contents of the report? Agreed. Yeah, thank you. Moving on to item 10 is the Winter Preparedness Report 2026, pages 103 to 110, and could I ask Paul O'Neill to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an overview of the arrangements that have been and are being put in place to ensure health and social care services are as prepared as they can be for the winter months. The recommendation is that the board is asked to note the contents of this report. The background states that in Lanarkshire's annual whole system planning is undertaken in preparing health and social care services in order to mitigate the risks normally associated with winter. The preparations undertaken for winter 25-26 built on the learning from previous winters, and national planning principles emphasise that surge in demand are no longer confined to winter and require a sustained integrated response, and reinforce 3 overarching principles in surge and winter planning, and these are outlined under 3.2. The NHS Lanarkshire Board was presented with and gave formal approval on the 2nd of August 2025, a system-wide approach to tackling winter challenges. And section 4 provides a whole system planning, an overview which began with the whole system planning event held on the 8th of August at Almada Street, South Lanarkshire Council headquarters, which was convened by the Chief Executives of NHS Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire Council and also North Lanarkshire Council, and it sought to ensure a collective understanding of performance, positive achievements, areas of reflection and learning from previous winters. Also to subsequently agree actions to ensure partners learn from evaluating impact of local actions, including agreements on how the impact of winter planning initiatives will be evaluated going forward, and mechanisms for sharing learning across the system. Throughout the report, under 4.3, the key actions are included within the report. Specific areas of development are included under section 4.4. And also it's important to note that ahead of winter, the validated data for Scotland in relation to the rate of patients in delay against a national target was set at no more than 34.6. Although at the time of writing of the report, we sat at 34.6. We sat just above that that target, but below the national average, as outlined by Leslie. We've seen an improvement within that area, which is actually covered in a further report, which I'll be presenting at the next section. I would also highlight at 4.10 the work that's ongoing with both North and South Lanarkshire health and social care partnerships in order to collaborate and on improvement plans and on the ongoing developments in referral processes for post-hospital assessment and or care, and those are also being assisted with our acute colleagues. As Suman highlighted earlier, there are employee implications within this space as a workforce supply challenges persist across health and social care, and this has led to increased competition for recruitment and retention at local, regional and national levels. This obviously possesses an ongoing risk and emphasises the need to develop new and transformational roles in response to growing demand. The Section 6 outlines the financial implications in regards to the winter planning, winter preparedness approach, and Section 8 is other implications in regards to flow in and through our system. So I would move to encourage the contents of the report be noted, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Paul, and for the report. Any comments, questions? Brian Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Paul. On the subject of winter preparations, I spoke to a carer at the weekend who was admitted himself for his health conditions. This resulted in the person that he had to be cared for having to go into emergency respite, and that was at a cost to the carer, which is over £3,000. Is there obviously this carer was now worried about what would happen if he had to go back into hospital again, and I just wondered if there's anything being set up in winter preparations to take into account that what will happen if when carers take not well, especially with this flu epidemic that's going around just now.
Thanks for that, Brian. Does anyone want to respond to that? Paul.
Sorry, I've seen Suman put his hand up there. I'll let Suman come in if that's okay.
No, so Paul goes first, and I'll come in at the end. Paul, please. Yep. On you go.
No problem. Thanks, Brian. Ultimately, obviously, we understand that the difficulties that this can cause when someone's carer becomes ill. There's obviously a variety of things that we would look to place our community teams around about these individuals in order to require as much support as we possibly can. But it is important to understand that sometimes respite care is required in these circumstances, and individuals would be supported by our teams within communities, within social work and also within primary care in order to find the best possible solution for these individuals. And we understand that it's very difficult to get into individual circumstances, but we will do all we can in order to make sure that any individual is kept within their own home and within that community space. I don't know if there's anything that Suman wants to add.
Okay, so what's going on, Suman?
Thank you. So just in addition to that, and I think it speaks to your last point, Brian, which is incredibly well made in terms of the current situation in terms of flu that's going through our community as well. So you're absolutely right. That's presents challenges right across both our workforce, but also for our unpaid carers within our communities, as well as individuals themselves who we are caring for in relation to that. Obviously, the paper sets out a lot of work that's been undertaken in terms of how we progress the flu programme. Some of we've seen reporting we put out this week as well in terms of additional drop-in opportunities for individuals to get flu vaccinations undertaken. So we'd want to take this opportunity to just reinforce the importance of vaccination for those individuals across our communities who are eligible for it, to highlight that there are lots of opportunities to get vaccinated, and that if you can do, we would absolutely recommend and encourage you to do so, because it's one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, your family and your community at this time of the year. And that equally applies, if not more so, to our own staff and indeed the staff of provider organisations working across health and social care. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Okay, you happy with that, Brian? I've got Eileen.
Thank you, Chair. I think, unfortunately, this year winter's come early, and it looks to be sort of going to be a sort of bad time, a bad winter. But equally, maybe either last year's 2 years ago, I remember sitting at the end of the winter season, and we were told that it hadn't transpired and it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So therefore, some of the, the monies that we put aside and whatever, weren't really as much required as we thought it might be. And I think that's the problem. It's never, that you don't want to listen, but different committees have told us about the winter planning, and I think everybody should be commended for the diligence and the work that they put in. But it is just, and I don't mean it's educated guesswork, but each year something different turns up, and each year something else happens. And I don't know whether we're getting it out to the public as much as we could. That we're doing as much as humanly possible, but there is always, as they call it, the curveballs that come in. And this flu that's going about seems to be knocking people for absolutely six. They're very, very ill, and anybody I've spoke to. But also, are we still encouraging, because in other reports that I've heard, some staff members who don't take up the flu or don't get the flu jab, or some members of the public who are eligible don't take it up. So I think that's something that really needs always to be pushed. But I think, unfortunately for us, it looks as if it's going to be a long winter and a bad winter, as opposed to maybe 2 years ago when we seemed to, well, it was bad enough, but it wasn't just as bad. And I think you can plan as much as you can and put it into action as much as you can, but there's always going to be things that's going to completely, just throw you and change the outlooks and outcomes of what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Eileen. Got Lindsay Allen.
Hi there. Yeah, it's just to kind of acknowledge the positive collaborative work that's highlighted within the report around the work with the independent sector providers and their workforce and vaccination. It's definitely been something that I've been pleased to be a part of in my role, and engaging that the providers within both care at home and care home services and their workforces in those efforts to support vaccination. And again, something that's been acknowledged both within Scottish Care, and I know something that's been highlighted as well with by my colleagues at national level as well. So it's just to kind of acknowledge that that's been a really positive piece of work to be involved in.
Okay, thanks for that, Suman.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I actually want to come in and just as a particular note of thanks to Lindsay for her leadership here, coming into role in terms of the work with Scottish Care and the providers in particular in relation to the flu campaign. Certainly one of our something that we, with hindsight, feels obvious that we should have done better, but absolutely will continue to work on, and we are promoting across Scotland, is actually but much closer working with the independent sector and indeed other sectors when it comes to refining the flu programme going forward. If I'm being honest, that's been somewhat designed as quite an inward NHS process, not just within Lanarkshire, but actually I would suggest Scotland as a whole. That has had real strengths in terms of leaning on expertise, but I think there's been elements where actually we would have benefited from much earlier conversations with colleagues such as Lindsay, who understand those parts of the sector and those areas of the workforce needed populations in a different way, to enable us to come up with much more targeted approaches and propositions. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to take forward a lot of that work on behalf of the rest of Scotland through Lanarkshire and indeed South Lanarkshire in the first instance. And again, that's in no small measure due to Lindsay's leadership here, so it's hugely appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Suman. Are Lanarkshire carers involved in that process as well?
Well, Lanarkshire Carers actually ran a drop-in flu clinic for carers, and in an hour and a half clinic, we got over 90 people coming in to get the vaccination. So it was highly successful, highly popular, and we hope that we get the opportunity. Well, they hope they get the opportunity to expand it next year.
Mhm. So you want to say something else, Brian? Your hand was up. Did you want
No,
to...
that was that was the point actually I raised my hand to make.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about it, just
Mhm.
this effectiveness of the campaign that they did, and I don't think Lanarkshire Carers expected such a large uptake, but they were delighted that everybody came and they want to all try and organise something again next year.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I've got Margaret.
Yeah, it's really just to reinforce that the Larkhall District Volunteer Group had a drop-in facility as well, and there was over 90 people come in to that over a couple of weeks. So I think we're all trying to work together here to try and promote as much as possible the uptake of the flu vaccine.
Thanks, Margaret. Thank you and for that work. I don't see any other comments. Do we agree therefore to note the report? Thank you. Moving on to item 11, the same theme, optimising flow, unscheduled care and focus, and that's pages 111 to 122. And I think Lynn is going to do a presentation and speak to this report. Lynn Huckerby. At least that's what it says in my notes.
Chair, what I'd suggest, sorry, apologies for this, what I'll suggest, given we've had some IT issues, if Paul leads on the report, and then we'll introduce both our colleague Claire Ritchie, who's the interim director of the Interface Directorate, and then also Lynn to present all together. Apologies for not having had the opportunity to update your notes. Paul, do you want to take the lead?
Okay, thank you. Okay, Paul.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as Simon outlined, I'll very briefly cover this report and then hand over to my colleagues in order to provide the presentation. So the purpose of the report is to provide an update on unscheduled care performance and improvement actions for Lanarkshire. I would draw your attention to section 4, which is the overview of the current performance analysis against improvement trajectories, which goes through the differing factors that our performance is measured, including the 4-hour performance, 8, 12 and 24 hours performance within the emergency departments, and then the acute hospital occupancy levels. In regards to 4.2.6, where it outlines our delayed discharge performance, I would like to take the opportunity to outline that over the past 12 months, South Lanarkshire recorded an average of 32.1 delayed discharges per 100,000 adult population, compared to a national average of 34.6. The number of bed days between April to October 2025 was 17,714 against a target of 19,811. So freeing up hundreds of bed days in order to benefit other patients and the wider system. I think it's important to note thanks to the South Lanarkshire Hospital discharge team, who have worked tirelessly within the whole system collaboration approach aligned with our primary care and acute colleagues. Throughout the report, it covers a number of other performance metrics in regards to actions in order to maximise the impact through flow management throughout the hospital in order to maintain the current performance. I would move then to ask that the board note the contents of the report.
Thanks, Paul. I don't see any. Can I move on to discussion after the presentation then, or does anybody want to make any points just now, or we'll leave it to after the presentation?
That'd be ideal, Chair. I think it'd be better if we do the presentation. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so do we agree to the recommendations on page 111 and note the report? Agreed? Okay, thank you. move on to the presentation.
Good morning. I'm Claire Ritchie, so I think I'm going first. I'll share the presentation. Just check that you can see the presentation.
Yep.
So yes, I'm Claire Ritchie, as Suman has introduced, Interim Director of Interface. Interface is a new division that's been set up in the last year, which is part of improvement process across the whole system in relation to system flow. I'm going to talk to you initially about the Flow Navigation Centre. So this has been set up over a year now. It's about navigating patients to the best pathway. It's a single point of access. It's a hub, which is now based in Kirklands, was previously the Emergency Response Centre in Hermyers, and has progressed and developed to providing a multidisciplinary, multi-agency team to manage demand from the front end, from the front door perspective. So all GP calls, all NHS 24 calls, and SAS calls come in through this flow navigation team, which, as I've said, include medical staff, ED staff, physicians, physios and nurses, and at this point in time radiographers, as well as admin. So the real core function is, and as you can see in this diagram, it gives an opportunity to provide alternative safe pathways of care for individuals that would primarily been admitted to hospital. So the more opportunity we have of bringing calls through this system, and the more opportunity we have outflow of pathways, linkages to, as defined within this slide, social care, rehabilitation, physios, OTs. We're doing a lot of work, as Mark knows, with co-design of pathways for primary care, with AMD and direct admissions, for instance, for frailty. And you may also know that we have e-triage at the front door of the 3 hospital sites, which is a digital check-in centre, which is a kiosk that allows people to put in their information and are defined as a priority score, which is then linked to the validation from the triage nurse and means that we can see more acutely unwell patients first. There's also links to the hospital at home virtual bed capacity, which we also have as an improvement perspective and opportunity, which is designed to really support decreased surge and occupancy within our hospital sites. And the virtual beds we have now, 9 pathways, including patients that may be waiting for diagnostics, who would wait in hospital for a number of weeks, waiting for MR, CT, scans, that can now go home, be monitored virtually, and the escalation and the monitoring is through the FNC Plus. If we take it on to the output in relation to our current status, so where has that taken us? So from an FNC Flow Navigation Centre Plus, we have over 6,800 calls a month. The GP and 24 split is 60-40. It gives us an opportunity from an NHS 24 to really work in collaboration, as with SAS, to look at opportunities. And currently we're looking at a huge opportunity with the direct admission 1 hour calls, where we know elsewhere of these calls, 50% of them who would have been directly admitted to hospital can be redirected elsewhere. We have a lot of pathways across the system. We have linked with prison services, paediatrics, police, cancer helplines, direct admission for frailty, as I've said, care homes, and also ladders of escalation in times of pressure. So what we're seeing is the opportunity to also self-care, which is about 22%. We're looking at 25% of total calls being redirected, and clearly managing what we can take away from sites. There's about 350 patients across the 3 sites, which is increasing over the last couple of months. The FNC, or the Flow Navigation Centre, manages the flow through the hospital home virtual wards, and to date in the last 10 months, we have taken 1,400 patients who have been on virtual monitoring. That ranges from frailty patients, diagnostic patients, renal, respiratory, and others, with a maximum concurrent patients of 107. Patient experience, people have reported a very positive experience. People like being in their own home, they like being supported away for infection, falls and other things. So a real positive experience in relation to that. And obviously across the whole system, working with GPs to look at opportunities for key conditions and co-design that pathway right into the right place. So to try and get, for instance, people with anemia or headache or hypertension right through ambulatory care, and hopefully optimise their journey and get them out again. We're currently working on a pilot over winter in relation to provide mobile lecturing for care homes, and that's just been initiated. So there's work elsewhere in Ireland and Orkney that have shown good outcomes for people in relation to that. And just to articulate some of the work with SAS, so we have SAS paramedics and advanced paramedics in the Flow Navigation Centre. We're looking at encouraging the crews to call in before taking to hospital. They can gain senior decision maker advice from an ED consultant, a physician or others. And when we increase that call volume, we see an opportunity of not taking patients to hospital by about 55%. So there's a lot of work being done in that area. And in times of pressure, we have worked very closely and previously in the last couple of weeks with SAS in relation to their challenge of vehicles outside our hospitals, therefore not being able to deploy vehicles to quickly respond to calls in the community. And that's been a very good piece of work in relation to whole system opportunity to review these calls with community nursing, falls teams and others, and look at possibilities and opportunities of keeping people safe. So that's a real canter through FNC. Lynn, are you ready to move to?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And thanks, Chair, for making us welcome this morning. So this is just a few slides to give you an overview of the work that we're doing, the improvement work that we're doing on University Hospital Hairmyre site. We're in week 8 of quite an exciting programme of change, led by all of our staff at all levels in groups across the site. So the ambition for this improvement work is that it becomes whole system. The intention is that we get it right for Hairmyres and then embed and scale that across all sites. But of course, important, I think, that we take the learning as we go, to try and scale that as we go, rather than it be a one and done at one site. So the 3 main work streams there are around decompressing the system, so reducing our occupancy levels, improving safety in terms of our long waits in ED, and improving flow. And we are also looking at an integrated discharge hub, which I will focus a bit more on given the context of this conversation. So a very agile approach, very much around small cycles of change, reviewing, evaluating, and then embedding that practice as we go. I'll move on to the next slide. Thanks, Claire. So I've touched there on the 3 systems. We have set up some trajectories there. And as I mentioned, the key piece of work for this conversation is around the discharge hub test of change. So we have put in place additional integrated discharge facilitator within our medicine of elderly wards in Hairmyres. And over the first couple of weeks in December, we had a focused piece of work which has supported a reduction of on-the-day cancellations. Now, What I would say is that as a couple of weeks test to change, there may well be other variables in that, and we are formally evaluating that, but we did reduce that from an average of 6 to 4 in the first week. In terms of our discharges in the first week, we increased those by about 3, and our average length of stay has reduced. We do need to obviously consider the evaluation of that to ensure that it is sustainable change that we are seeing. In January, and I think it was alluded to in terms of additional social work assistant capacity is coming on stream in Hare Myers, and we're very fortunate that as part of this test of change, we will be able to include social work capacity to see where we can look more closely at how we might align roles, make the best value out of both the IDF and the social worker roles as we go forward. I'll just move on to the last slide. Claire, thank you. So it is absolutely about improving our communications and reducing delays, and I think we've seen that over the first couple of weeks, having that consistency of the IDF and as we go forward the social worker as well. We'll be looking to streamline the referral processes to social work. Hopefully digitisation of those processes would be an aspiration. And as I say, making sure that we're maximising the value of those roles, both the discharge facilitator and social work, and obviously using the data to drive the improvement. Happy to take any questions or thoughts.
Thanks for that, Lynn. That was very informative, and thank you to Claire as well. A lot in those presentations, put very concisely, very clear. Thank you. I've got Margaret.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Very, very impressed with the work that's going on. I also want to commend the service, the flow navigation service. I've had a visit there, and it was really impressed with what was going on. But I've also had to use the service in the last 10 days, and very impressed. And it did prevent my husband from being admitted to hospital. So the whole process is definitely working, and I'm sure over time will help the blockages within the admissions in the hospital. Thanks again.
Thanks for that, Margaret. Yeah, I would agree. I thought the presentation was very interesting, and also the report specifically in relation to the work that is going on, I assume on a sort of ward-to-ward basis with discharge coordinators, hospital social work teams, the outreach discharge support and the discharge support hubs. So I think all of that will really help to actually make sure that people are kind of, discharged when they should be, when they're medically, able to be. And that's really positive that the numbers are going in the right direction. Also, hopefully, unfortunately, we're probably not quite where we would like to be in terms of A&E waiting times, but obviously all of that, the better we can do the whole discharge process, then that will, ultimately, I would imagine, also impact on that in terms of people his experiences at the front door, and obviously in conjunction with the front door approach and making sure people are not admitted in the first place. But I think that is very, very positive in terms of that concentrated work to make sure that we work with multidisciplinary teams and that we actually start the whole discharge process, if you like, as soon as somebody's actually admitted. So that is sort of very positive. I would just the discharge hub facilitators, are they on a ward by ward basis, or are they kind of responsible for one particular hospital?
Yep, I'm happy to come. Yeah, it's okay. I'm happy to come back in on that. So at the minute we have, so within each of the hospitals, there are integrated discharge facilitators, but not enough. So as part of the winter funding, we have got approval to recruit an additional 6. So that will be about two per hospital. For Hare Myers, we're actually a wee bit ahead of the curve, so we're actually recruiting our second. We already have one additional. We're recruiting a second one this week, so hopefully by January they are in place. At the minute, the focus is on our medicine of elderly wards, but clearly we want to take the learning from that and scale up across the rest of the hospital.
Okay, thank you. Leslie.
Get the microphone on. Thanks very much, Chair, and to Paul, to Claire, and to Lynn. As one who frequents University Hospital Wishaw on a 3-weekly basis, I mentally count the ambulances sitting outside A&E every time I go in, and I was very interested to hear about the work with the Scottish Ambulance Service, and I wondered if Claire or Lynn could tell us a little bit more about that, because as well as it not being ideal for someone sitting outside a hospital in an ambulance, the ambulance can't be somewhere else as long as it's sitting there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Leslie. Do you want to respond to that, Lynn or Claire?
And maybe let Claire go first, and then I can add anything else.
So thanks, Leslie. So yes, the real focus around about collaboration with Scottish Ambulance is having access to their dashboard within FNC to look at the calls, as they call it, the stat and the acuity in relation to that. Giving an opportunity to their team, their paramedics, to have advice from a SDM, senior decision maker, and to have other pathways. So Scottish Ambulance have their integrated hub, which they can phone in, which is staffed with GPs and some nurses, but the pathways are very limited. So the more we can offer to avoid admission and to also use our team in a different way in relation to aspects of nursing, going out and supporting patients' welfare checks, as we've done in relation to times of escalation. We now, over winter, will have a paramedic also in FNC, and we're now looking at all stations, all 10 stations, and Lanarkshire now calling in. So I think it's a journey, and we're doing a lot more in collaboration. What we've seen is work that they did over the September weekend, where they took all the 24-hour calls that came in via ambulance and had opportunity to turn around 60% of them. So we're going to work very closely with our integrated hub to offer pathways that we can work together. So I think that's an area of development and huge opportunity, but a good starting point.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that we are doing a bit of work with Centre for Sustainable Delivery around triage, turnaround times and triage. So there's a bit of work happening at pace, which again is really just looking at the localised pathways and processes between ambulance service and drop-off times.
Okay, thanks for that. I've got Jim Hughes.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire, and Paul. I think I'm based in Ireland, so I mean I have seen the changes that have been made in general. Excuse me, they've been very well received. I think the only concern we have is that we're not going to try and do this by stretching the resource. We've obviously got to recruit appropriately, and that's not just in the acute, but obviously further down the line, going into communities and so on. So it's a great idea. I'm really behind it, but it's just to make sure we don't fall by not recruiting appropriately. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Claire?
Yeah, just to come back in. So thanks, Jim. And I think this is an opportunity to blend the workforce, as I think you and I have talked about before in relation to skills and sharing through rotation and other opportunities. So again, I think this can only support a holistic view of people within the community, and the more we can keep people out of hospital with the right skills, then I think that's good outcomes.
Okay. Thanks, Claire. Any further comments? Okay. Or could I just, oh, sorry, Suman.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not going to preempt your thanks to colleagues for asking questions. It's just to kind of highlight that in similar theme to what we've talked about before, and Chair, you have highlighted it. So for many parts, for far too many of our patients and indeed many of our staff, we are not where we want to be as a Lanarkshire system, particularly in terms of parts of our acute services at the moment. That being said, in addition to the huge amount of work that's going on a daily basis across our wards, across our sites, across our communities, I would absolutely kind of reinforce the point you've made previously, and indeed the Vice Chair's made, around the fact that we are looking ahead and we're planning ahead. So as Claire set out here, the work there has been ongoing for quite some time, and a lot of that is on the basis of how we can be better placed late the next time round, at the next step, at the next stage, the next year. And similarly, in terms of the approach that Lynn set out, again, that's not just about how we deal with as best we can the current situation, but as in many ways, in the way that Jim's alluded to, how we are thinking ahead around not just what we will do within Hare Myers going forward as part of a new business as usual, but indeed how we can reframe the work that will, how we'll approach these challenges across all of our acute sites, so that, again, fingers crossed, touch wood, when it comes to this time next year, some of the challenges we are still contending with, and indeed many parts of Scotland contending with, we'll have got a better approach to. So I very much commend the work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Donald.
Thanks, Chair. It's really just to echo the thanks that have been given to the teams from people already. And I think it's difficult when you look at the sort of the overall report and you look at the sort of the key performance indicators. A lot of them are still in red, which is concerning when you purely look at that. But when you dig deeper, you can see the amount of tremendous work that's getting done. And it wouldn't just be red, it would be flashing lights and neon signs, if not for the work that's getting done at the moment. It's been hugely successful. And unfortunately, you don't see that in the headline figures. But when you see the sort of the admission advoicings, you see the sort of the virtual bed, you see all these initiatives and the amount of people that are going through the system that would have otherwise have been in hospital. And you see the success of the system, and it'll take longer for it to sort of reflect itself in the headline, the key performance indicators. But I think it's important to stress the amount of good work that's been done and the success of the system so far, which you don't see at the moment within the headline statistics. You have to look beyond that, and I think it's important we do that and just recognise the work that's ongoing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Donald. I don't see any more comments, so I would just echo those comments that have been made by Donald and Suman, and we look forward to revisiting this as we progress through the next year. But again, I'd just like to acknowledge the excellent work that's actually been done and is starting to, as you say, achieve results. Thank you. So I'll move on then to item 12, and that's the Chief Social Work Officer Annual Report 2024 to 25, and that's pages 123 to 168. And could I ask Ian McRae to speak to the report? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few slides for members as well, so just to help just draw out some key aspects. Jackie, do you mind just putting the slides up while I just a bit of an introduction to the paper? So I'll just start with, obviously, the paper contains obviously the annual Chief Social Work Officer report for South Lanarkshire Council for activities during 2024 to 2025. Members might be aware that the Chief Social Work Officer is required to prepare an annual report of all activities to the Chief Social Work Officer Advisor to Scottish Government on an annual basis. The report follows a fairly standard framework and contains an overview of all activity related to the delivery of statutory functions by social work resources. The report has in the main 5 sections which are covered by governance, accountability, statutory functions, service quality and performance, resource to deliver functions, workforce issues, and forward planning. Section 4 of your report does provide a very brief summary for IGB members, and it highlights some of the good aspects and some of the challenges contained within the report. I suppose in particular what I'd like to do from members is to draw out just some key issues in the slides. Now, under obviously the quality and performance, engagement with service users and communities is a very significant and important aspect. Engaging obviously with the public and respecting lived experience is fundamental to deliver an effective, fair and compassionate health and social care services. And I wanted just to highlight, obviously, just and draw out from the report some of the really significant and progressive aspects of what has been happening across the partnership. You'll see there just in terms of engagement with service users and communities. We've got the South Lanarkshire Health and Social Care Forum, which is obviously an independent community-led group that acts as the voice of the community and helps shape local health and social care services. There's been really significant increase and uptake from the public who use our services or experience our services through the Care Opinion platform. In particular, what we have highlighted and what the report does say is that justice services in particular are probably the first justice services across Scotland to really adopt the Care Opinion platform, and they're really seeing an increase in the use and feedback from people who experience justice services, which is a real achievement. We've got the Promise Board for young people, the Promise and the Champions Board for young people who are care experienced to help shape and have their voice heard in delivering of services. And we also obviously are working very closely and employing people who we believe are experts by experience. And we'll see that, and you'll see that contained in the report, via employing more and more peer mentors alongside our populations of people who need help and experience our services every day. Obviously, we've got the Equally Say, which is a commissioned adult advocacy service, which has seen an increase. It's in its second year now of operation, and is seeing a significant increase in people coming forward and offered advocacy. And clearly, obviously, we've got the Lanarkshire Carer Service offering support to adults and carers, and we've seen a significant increase in the last year as well, and that's reported and contained within the report. So I just wanted to highlight some of those really important aspects. Another aspect I wanted to draw out is just obviously the recognition of innovative projects that have been nationally recognised through awards, and obviously we've had the Blantyre Life campus. Obviously, we've had the COSLA Award for the family support hubs in terms of tackling inequalities and improving health. That was the category. And we've also had, at the end of the summer, through the Scottish Health Awards, a recognition for the recovery-orientated justice services. So only three very nationally recognised, but there are so many more things that are going on that should be celebrated. And just finally, I just wanted to kind of draw members' attention to just looking ahead and some of the aspects that we will need to we've already started to factor in terms of the delivery of social work services. And that's obviously the justice service increasing on people being managed within the community. We've got the Care and Justice Scotland Act in 2024, and that will bring some very substantial changes, particularly to young people aged 16 and 70 who come into conflict with the law, and how those young people should be managed differently and more towards a children's system as opposed to previously in the adult system. We've also got the Care and Care Experienced and Service Planning Bill, which has significant implications for particularly lifelong advocacy, the expansion of aftercare for those young people who've maybe spent a period in care as children. So we've got some significant challenges with that. We've obviously got the care reform Scotland Act 2025. We're also, at the moment, as you know, implementing a new information system across social work resources. So that's just some key highlights that I thought would be helpful just to draw out for HIB members today. On that note, I would like to just refer back to section 2 of the report and ask the HIB to approve the recommendations. And I'm happy to take any questions, although this has been a report that was compiled by my predecessor, Liam Purdy. I'm more than happy to take any questions. If there's anything I can't answer, I would definitely come back and update committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really informative presentation. Do we have any comments, questions? Can I just say, I always find the social work annual report, the Chief Officer's report, really helpful and useful, particularly because it signposts you to a lot of other documents that you just referred to, you know, for example, the workforce plan, the care review. So it's really useful for that. And it also gives a really concise overview of all of the services. And also in relation to, for example, you were talking about the criminal justice, the restorative justice, some case studies in relation to that, which really case studies really help to put things into context and to appreciate what kind of impact that they're actually having on the young people in particular that become involved in that. So I would definitely recommend the annual report for people who want to, you know, because obviously we're limited in terms of people's time, but to get a really good broad overview of what's going on, and certainly to highlight things around increasing demand, for example, the bit about, you know, long-term conditions in more deprived SIND areas, and also child protection demand, again, still on the increase, and those things, you know, are obviously things we have to, you know, be aware of going into the future, and all of the transformation, you know, changes, and hopefully the Marmot information will go into a much deeper dive in that. But that's also, you know, we're alerted to that within report, and the level of increase in demand it is frightening, and also the level of criminal justice reports, and also the positive involvement that we've had from the third sector. So I always find that report extremely useful. So with that, I'll ask Leslie to come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm less close to these matters than you are, so I probably find this report even more useful. It's a very easy read for someone who's not involved in the work of the Council. Mine is a bit of a niche question, Anya, so it might be one that you want to come back to us on. Notwithstanding, we've talked about delayed discharges and flow through hospitals a lot today. Notwithstanding how much we promote powers of attorney, adults with incapacity and guardianships can play a fairly major role in delaying people's discharge from hospital. I just wondered, do you feel you're adequately resourced to support guardianship applications? Thanks. If you want to come back to me on it, I'm happy for that too.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Anya, do you want to come in just now? Or?
Yeah, if you don't mind, yeah, I would, Leslie Ann, if I could come back to you. It's a very good question, and there is a significant volume, as you know, of guardianship orders. So I would come back to you with a response. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more comments and questions, so just thank you for that again, Anya. Very clear and concise. And do we agree to note the annual report? Thank you. Moving on to item 13, South Lanarkshire Public Protection Strategy 2025 to 28, and could ask Anya to speak to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the South Lanarkshire's Public Protection Strategy covering the period 2025 to 2028. Just a wee bit of background. Public protection in South Lanarkshire obviously is the backbone to promote effective partnership working between adult support and protection committees, child protection committees, multi-agency public protection arrangements, suicide prevention, and the alcohol and drug partnership, and the violence against women and girls partnership, and the community justice. So it brings together all of those key committee public protection areas. The Public Protection Chief Officers Group provides the strategic leadership and governance and accountability for the collective delivery of public protection arrangements across South Lanarkshire. Obviously, its core functions is simply to improve outcomes and experiences for children and adults at risk of harm. The South Lanarkshire Public Protection Strategy, which is appended in your pack, was approved by the Public Protection Chief Officers Group very recently. The strategy sets out the public protection partnership's vision to promote the multi-agency partnership working which reduces the risk of harm, abuse, or exploitation to children, young people, adults, and members of our communities. The strategy simply just lays out the aim, the vision, the leadership and governance through which our PP public protection arrangements and outcomes are trying to achieve through improvement and drive. Again, happy to take any questions, but I will take members back to the recommendation in section 2 for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, comments? No. Do we agree to recommendations in 169 and to note report? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you for that, Anya. Moving on, 14 is self-directed support update, and that's pages 181 to 188. And could I ask Anne Broderick to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This paper provides an update for members in relation to South Lanarkshire's delivery of self-directed support and our commitment to improvement of a number of areas of the whole system. Within the paper, section 3 gives the background to self-directed support. Section 4 gives an overview of our current self-directed support arrangements, including our improvement processes. Specifically highlighting 4.13, that sheds a light on our ongoing commitment to workforce development. In relation to maximising the personal assistant workforce and resilience within South Lanarkshire Council, section 4.15 gives information. 4.16 outlines our engagement with supported people and carers. 4.2 speaks to our actions in relation to support people who receive a budget through option 1 within self-directed support. 4.21 gives detail on a Scottish Government collaborative community initiative that's happening within South Lanarkshire. Conscious of time, so I won't give you any more detail at this stage, other than to thank you for your time to read the report and to listen to myself this morning. I would like to refer you back to section 2, which asks for the content of the report to be noted, and I'd welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you. Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank Anne and Ian Beattie. I'm actually part of the In Control Scotland work and have been invited to be a member of the SDS Improvement Board. And we're also looking at setting up a group via the forum to enable supported people to have their say on the website and other information. This work is done for carers via the Lanarkshire Carers Connection Group, but there wasn't a group for people who have a budget. So we're going to be setting that group up as well. So a lot of good work being planned, and really happy to be part of that. And I'm sure we'll be able to bring back some information once that has been has commenced, and also the national work from In Control Scotland. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. We look forward to having some feedback on that at the IGB. I don't see any more comments, questions. Thank you. I thought it was a very useful update, and obviously we've moved quite considerably in terms of the amount of staff that we've now got trained in self-directed support and the numbers of people that can access it. And the report kind of outlines that really well in terms of specifically numbers of people that are actually participating in self-directed support assessments. So that's been very useful. Okay, do we agree to note the report? Thank you. Moving on to item 15, homeless pressures update, and that's pages 189 to 196. And could I ask Jackie to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. Could I start by highlighting a correction at 3.4 of the report to clarify it was 3.17 million that the Council received in RRTP funding over the last 7 years. There's a comma in place of a full stop. Apologies for that. The purpose of the report is to update the board on the continuing high demand for homelessness assistance, highlight actions in response, and to highlight progress of the new housing bill, which has implications for public bodies. Section 2 of the report sets out recommendations, and again to clarify, all are for noting, and I'll come back to them. Section 3 covers background, noting that the last update to the IGB on homelessness was in September 2024, and we discussed at that time the surge in demand for homeless assistance over the previous 2 years, the pressure that had built in the system over that time, and that there was really no sign in the short term of that easing up. And also noted that that local trend mirrored the national trend. That report and this update also emphasises the Council and its partners' strong track record in effective delivery of homelessness services, the focus on a partnership approach, and our commitment to preventing and alleviating the harms of homelessness set out in the local housing strategy and the authority's wider strategic plans as well. Moving on, 3.4 of the report notes the additional RRTP funding that we received over those 7 years. And that funding really facilitated additional intensive support. We tested some new approaches, and it helped with real success in reducing homelessness across the authority. We went from a long-term homeless caseload or backlog of around 1,000 cases down at its lowest to under 700, and really felt like we were on our way to rapid rehousing. However, 3.8 of the report onward covers the reversal of that progress from 2021 as demand peaked, and the report sets out the reasons for that, and resulting in several local authorities declaring a housing emergency in 2024. The Scottish Government declared a national housing emergency in the May, and South Lanarkshire Council's leaders took the decision to also declare a local housing emergency in June 24. From 3.11, the report sets out the key objectives of our overarching homeless strategic plan. Again, the focus on prevention wherever possible, our ongoing commitment to resolving homelessness as quickly as possible, including letting a majority of council tenancies to homeless households. 3.12 sets out some examples of our actions to meet those objectives. The continued focus on intensive support, our approach to supporting care experienced young people, dedicated resources across the partnership, the shared assessment, understanding needs and aspirations, and working together to get the best outcomes. Section 4 moves on to look at the demand profile, And at table 1, that does show almost a 10% reduction in homeless presentations between 2023-24 and 24-25. And that's continued into this year. We're sitting at the moment around about a 10% reduction compared to the previous year. So that's positive, but as you can see from table 1, that's not yet converting to a reduction in our caseload, just because of the unprecedented surge in demand over that 3-year period. It's taken time to sort of mitigate the impact in terms of the caseload, but we're definitely moving in the right direction now, so that's positive. 4.6 notes the increasing trend in relation to out of area presentations since the decision was taken to remove consideration of local connection in Scotland. We're definitely seeing more and more presentations from out of area. And also we've had to rely over the last couple of years on hotel accommodation, which is not something we ever did. But while we're scaling up our temporary accommodation options, and it's maybe worth noting, we've got a couple of new projects, a new first stop rapid access emergency accommodation project, and also a new supported accommodation project in partnership with Social Bite coming early in the new year. 4.10 of the report highlights the authority's whole system approach, noting work with Public Health Scotland to enable data sharing and analysis to help inform our prevention work going forward. Also, our local health and homeless steering group and the 3 thematic subgroups and the areas that we're really trying to home in on: improving shared data and learning, children affected by homelessness, and overall health and wellbeing of those affected. And that group's been really successful already in identifying solutions and existing resources that can meet multiple and complex needs. And I think it's going to be really important in terms of the requirements from the housing bill and the prevention duties. The report at 4.14 moves on to a bit more detail around our approach to supporting young people moving on from a care setting. Again, that early shared assessment to understand needs and aspirations, and a person-centred approach, which has really helped engagement. And 4.15 sets out an example of a partnership approach, working with Bernardo's SLC Futures, it's called. It's funded by Big Lottery for 2 years, and it's delivering an intensive support across the partners to meet individual needs, preparing young people to move on to their own home when they're ready. It's been really successful, a lot of really positive feedback from the young people involved. And already 2 people have moved on to their own settled housing, 3 are ready to move on. And the partnership have utilised some of the additional capacity within that project for outreach support for 4 young people as well. There's a short video that I think, because of time constraints, is going to be shared as a link, but it's a really good watch if people can get the chance. 4.16 of the report moves on to the requirements of the new housing bill, which has received royal assent since this report was written on the 6th of November. But we are still waiting on the commencement schedule and the guidance to fully understand the requirements. But the report sets out the areas that we know are coming: new prevention duties on public bodies to make routine housing inquiry and understand circumstances, known as Ask and Act. There'll be an extension to the definition of threatened with homelessness to apply for 6 months prior to the date of expected homelessness instead of the current 2 months. Strengthened local authority duties to act early and proactively, an expansion of housing first and complex needs supports, domestic abuse protections, and that'll include social landlords will be required to have a policy setting out how they'll support tenants, and additional requirements around strategic planning and data use. And the report notes that public bodies specified within the final bill includes IGBs. So as I mentioned, there's no time scale. We don't have the commencement schedule or the guidance yet, but we're engaged with COSLA and Scottish Government partnership groups, and we'll keep partners updated as we get any information. in terms of implications, we anticipate there'll be financial implications in time. We also anticipate additional resources. The Scottish Government are currently consulting with local authorities on delivery cost assumptions, and we're fully engaged in that. And Section 8 notes the wider implications in terms of a link to the IGB strategic aims. At Section 10, there's no direction required, so if I can return then to the recommendations, the board is asked to note the increase in homelessness demand and the pressure and impact of that, the actions that are being progressed to mitigate the pressure, and the progress as far as we know just now with the housing bill, and that we'll keep partners posted on that. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you for that, Jackie. Thank you for the report. Are there any questions, comments on the report? Suman.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to thank Jackie, but also our Housing and Technical Resources colleagues from the Council in terms of the huge amount of work that goes on in terms of this. It's one of the areas that strategically we've prioritised our working relationship over recent years, and I'm continue to be reassured and somewhat inspired by the huge amount of work they've done and the willingness to work with us. What I would draw your attention to the following. Firstly, when we talk about prevention, the work to address inequalities, again, linking that discussion you had around Marmot earlier, as board members will recall, Marmot highlights, as indeed as a body of work in public health, highlights that the primary determinants of health and well-being are socio-economic, environmental. In other words, the work that we do, as impactful as it is dwarfed by the work that needs to go on in terms of the place that people live, the lives that they live, and how they're supported to live in those places in an independent and refreshed manner. It is difficult to then see how we make much progress if we are not addressing a housing emergency and indeed addressing the levels of homelessness that we're having to contend with. So for all the work that we need to do from a health and social care partnership and an IGB perspective, I would just to highlight the importance of the wider work that's going on with the leadership of our housing colleagues and others to address these fundamental issues which are material to the health and well-being of so many people within our populations. And also then highlight, and again, I know that members recognise this, that there can be a tendency within health and social care to act as a bit of a bubble in terms of the pressures and demands and challenges that we face, not least in terms of our workforce and finances. And while that is absolutely true, and as your chief officer, I would obviously underline that, I'm very well aware, as indeed you all are, that we are not operating in a vacuum, and that indeed other parts of the public services and indeed the public sector as a whole are faced with the same challenges, and as Jackie's highlighted, they are also having to contend with further demands and expectations, which, albeit very laudable, if they're not funded, we can't progress and will then have unintended consequences elsewhere. So again, I just want to make sure that the board's fully excited on those wider issues, and again, my thanks to Jackie.
Okay, thanks for that, Suman. I've got Eileen.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting report. And very succinctly put, and there's not a lot that we could add to the information that we received. My own opinion as a councillor in this, wearing a councillor's hat, I have a surgery, and last night I had 4 different people who presented to come and tell me about their housing situation. So I know that it impacts on all the different aspects of the work that we do. And I think Suman actually referred to it there as well, where we cannot work in a vacuum. It presents people who have not got adequate housing, it presents as sometimes mental health issues, sometimes just plain health issues, just various different things. And it's one of this is the most serious that I've ever seen it, and I have been a councillor for 45 years, and it's steadily getting worse each year as we go on. More and more people who cannot find adequate housing. I think what was highlighted as well, that sometimes councils collectively have their hands tied behind their back because for various reasons we were working away quite well doing what we thought was good for the areas that we all represented, but there comes maybe a national edict, open up, the local connection thing, all this type of thing. and then that throws it, that throws it all out of kilter again. So I can only commend housing services, social work services. It's very complex, very difficult, and I believe, as much as we're doing, it's a dam that's about to burst, because as it's like quicksand, as you dig a hole, the sand's filling in again behind you, and it is one that is not going away, and I don't think will go away very, very quickly, and it will bring with it all the different challenges, be it people's just well-being, health, whatever, and we can work and do our best, and again, over the 45 years plus now, what has happened as well is there's been a great shift in social attitudes and how people, live their lives. And not always to the bad, I have to say. I think a lot of times I have seen terrible, but a lot of times it's for the good. But it's also bringing its challenges, because it's different people looking for different things that was never there before. You don't, you can have just different challenges, basically. But we can only do our best, and I thank everybody very much for what they do. And we just need to keep trying to, plug the holes and do what we can. But it's not an easy challenge, and I don't know that it'll be one that will be solved very quickly, and we'll need to keep returning. But anything that we are doing is gratefully welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Yeah, and I'll just echo these comments. I mean, the factors at play in terms of increasing the demand for homelessness is very well outlined in the report, and the cost of living, and also the fact that there's been housing emergencies declared, I think actually puts it into perspective. We are in a housing emergency situation, and I do commend the work that the homelessness team has done in this regard. But it does have, implications, as you see, Jackie, that the cost of temporary accommodation has gone up. Temporary accommodation is not ideal for a whole range of different reasons, and also the fact that 60% of the rapid rehousing programme is being allocated to homeless priority group is obviously, as Eileen has said, is having impacts in other parts of the system, whereby people could be waiting for much longer time in terms of getting housing that meets their needs. So it is concerning at the moment how long can we actually maintain this level of service under the circumstances. And of course the answer is basically, is obvious to everyone, is that we need more social housing, and there's a programme of social housing financed out within the housing investment strategy, but that is the issue, and that's the one that has to be resolved at that level, because the demand profile is not reducing, and we appreciate all the pressure and the job that you've done under very, very trying circumstances. So with that, would thank you for the report, Jackie, and ask, do we agree to note the report? Agreed. Thank you. So I'll move on to item 16, which is the Community Planning Partnership Annual Outcomes Report, and it's Jane Kerr to speak to that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Jen Kerr, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at South Lanarkshire Council, and part of that role involves the coordination and management of the Community Planning Partnership. I am pleased to provide you with the 2024-25 Annual Report of the Community Planning Partnership. This is a report that we produce on an annual basis, and we must publish by the 30th of September every year. So it was approved by the Community Planning Board in September 17th, 2025. This is probably the last year this report will look as it does. Appendix 1, I think it is, in your papers, goes through the report, and it's a series of our short-term outcomes that partners across the partnership work around and towards, mainly around inequality and addressing inequality. So just in reference to earlier questions around Marmot and comments around prevention and inequalities. The purpose of the Community Planning Partnership is to address stubborn inequalities, and always has been. So what you'll see in the annual report is what different various partners across the priorities of the community plan are doing across 76 actions to address inequality. Our new Marmot information, I can already see next year will vastly vary this report to really refocus it on some of the inequalities that we've now learned have strong social gradients. The Marmot Principles program has 8 principles. Most of that, if you invest in these 8 principles, the wider social determinants of health, which mirror pretty much our community plan and its topics that we cover as priorities, that you should therefore increase and improve health and life expectancy regardless of where one starts in life, and regardless of the inequality that one faces. And as you've heard today, you know, there's each part each part of this having access to a safe life, having good employment, having good housing, having a safe community. All of these things, each of these pillars and principles within Marmot are on ramps into the other ones. They're all very interlinked because people's lives are holistic. They're not one topic at a time. In each part of their life can contribute to their sense of well-being and their health. So you'll see we're doing fairly well in terms of the annual report for 24-25, except for in 2 areas which won't be a surprise: the homelessness crisis and delayed discharge is the only areas of amber, and there's significant information in the reports to outline the large and good progress both all partners and services have contributed towards those 2 topical issues that are much bigger than in context than in practice. It summarizes the outcomes as well that we've achieved, so some of the longer term and some case studies in the second appendix, which is the outcome improvement report, and it just talks about different activities that have taken place across various partners to achieve the aims of the plan. So as you're aware, the CPP is involved in the Marmot Place program, and for the last year we've been looking very intensely at data, and some of this information is telling us maybe where we might want to do a bit more prevention work and on what topics. So where is the social inequality really impacting on people's health and on their life expectancy? And it's no surprise that those are the cases maybe, and what we're learning to date isn't super surprising either. And there's 2 parts to the data. There's a sort of national data that the Institute for Health Equity have been helping us to understand and look at a South Lanarkshire wide level, as well as a local data group where we have our public health consultant, Carol Stewart, helping to work with local services, both across the partners, health and social care, to understand some more management intelligence type information we hold within our own services and how to make use of those. And the first of the packs on early years, the data packs that the local data group is producing, is being presented this afternoon to the Marmot Leadership Group. So we're just starting to get our first bits of information to discuss, to look at, to decide then what are we going to do about this in the early years project that's been agreed by the Marmot Leadership Group and indeed by the NHS, this board and council as our priority for child poverty, to address child poverty early on. We will be using the Marmot information as well as this current report to introduce a new outcomes performance framework for the Community Planning Partnership this spring. And this is where we will then integrate someone's earlier question about the population health framework and its priorities into those of the Community Planning Partnership to make sure the local level, again, with the longest aim impact priority being to increase life expectancy by the reduction of the impact of health equity. That this framework will start to bring that together and help all partners see where they will fit into that, and also help us to progress information and reporting. So like I said, in the future, this report will look very different, and it will be tied to a wider, more longer term outcomes framework, which we pause the development of subject to what we learned from Marmot and we knew that the population health framework was forthcoming. So now that that's all just about here and in place, we now will start to pull together an integrated outcomes framework, really a logic model and a contribution model to see how we are all contributing to that. So in conclusion, I am pleased to present the report for last year and the great progress across all of our partners and working to support those who face some of our most stubborn economic and social inequalities across South Lanarkshire. We have, and I'm looking forward to coming back next year with the same report with a lot more detail around our inequalities and where prevention practice is going to be focused or has indeed started to address those. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for the report. Do we have any comments, questions? I would just say that look forward to getting the outcomes framework and the information that you've touched on. We also touched on that earlier, and we'll be looking at that in relation to the report that Suman's going to bring to give us, a better understanding of the context and how Marmot is going to help us do what you've outlined in terms of, identifying the key areas that we need to, focus our resources on in terms of prevention. So thank you for that, and we look forward to this coming back to the committee in various different guises. So thank you. Do we agree to note the report? Thank you. Moving on to item 17, the public bodies climate change duties, pages 231 to 270, and can I ask Suman to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as a number of members will recognise and is set out in the report, this is a submission which has already been taken through the Performance and Audit Subcommittee, and so has been brought here having been submitted to the Scottish Government. The background section, section 3, sets out the requirement for IGBs to prepare the following attachment as part of the Climate Change Scotland Act. Section 4 sets out the approach that we take, noting that the IGB isn't responsible for any facilities or indeed staff directly, so hence why a response is routinely nil. But we do take assurance, and IGB does take assurance from the work of the partner organisations, namely South Lanarkshire Council and NHS Lanarkshire. And so 4.2 provides a range of examples of work that's been undertaken that have been extracted from the submissions that both the Council and the Health Board themselves have made. And having set all that out in summary, I would take you back to the recommendations under section 2 and happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Suman. Do we have any questions, points for Suman? No. Do we agree to recommendations and to note the report? Thank you. I don't have any urgent business, so having run 6 minutes over, which I don't think Leslie ever did, sorry, Eileen, did you want to come in?
Thanks very much, Chair. It was just going over the papers and looking at them today, well, not just today, over the weekend, etc. This is sort of the end of the year, and I know you'll say your own wishes to people, but it's occurred to me that how much we depend and need all the staff and everybody who helps at these meetings. But in particular, for us, we've heard from housing staff, we've heard from social services, we've heard from everybody. And if everybody didn't work together, I don't really know what would happen. We're good at complaining, and I get complaints and I put them up and always get them answered. But sometimes we're not always really grateful for what goes on behind the scenes. And I think today in particular, when we heard, all the different things that are happening in housing and just various different things, and also I usually get quite scared when I look at the things that might happen, and we've got to put them as red and amber and all the different things, and yet we always seem to come out the other side. So I just felt that it was difficult, the papers, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, I think, because we've got good people behind us, including yourself and Leslie and everybody else. So for me, I just wanted to say thank you. 2025 has been challenging. 2026 will probably be challenging as well. But if we all pull together and don't get fractious too much, then I think we'll always get there in the end. But that's all it was. It was difficult, the papers, some of them. And you think, is there never going to be anything that's good? But there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, and thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Eileen. That's a good note to end on. I'll just echo your comments. Thanks to everyone involved in the IGB, and of course all of the staff across health, social care, the third sector, that have allowed us, I think, to be a buffer in very, very difficult times. I think in terms of, public services, health and social work, I think it would be a lot worse if our officers and staff and the third sector weren't doing what they're doing and offering the services that they are to the high level that they are under, as you say, extremely challenging circumstances. So on that, I don't have any urgent business. So I would just like to wish everyone all the best wishes for the season, to go away and relax and forget about work for a couple of weeks. And I shall see you to continue your work in 2026. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
the best.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy Christmas.
All the best, everyone.
You
Thanks
too.
very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.